that would have been Amy.
Yeah.
Amy Jacques Garvey.
And she said that she went because she wanted to complete or further her husband's work. But it was hard because Du Bois, he was hostile, you know, like to women. You know, he just had, you know.
Well. Sure, I'm on. Okay. Doesn't really.
Uhuru. Uhuru and welcome to Black Power Blueprint Live. We have moved from our weekly Friday nights to Tuesday nights, holding these webinars to discuss the most important questions of our times and to inform you and raise resources, awareness, and raise reparations for the Black Power Blueprint Project in St. Louis, Missouri. My name is Jamie Simpson. I'm a longtime member of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, and that is the organization of white people who work under the leadership of the Movement for the Liberation of Africa and African People here and around the world, a movement which is led by the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And tonight, I want to announce that we have the tremendous honor of having with us right here in the studio, Chairman Omali Yeshitela himself. Truly an honor, a man without whom we all would not be here. I know I wouldn't be here, and we just cannot say enough about what a difference Chairman Omali Yeshitela has made to this world as the leader of the African People's Socialist Party, and who for more than 50 years has struggled to forever transform, to change the wretched conditions of African people that we see everywhere, especially for the working class, and working for self-determination, self-government, and power over their own lives. African power over African lives here in the U.S. and around the globe. The Black Power Blueprint project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund and Black Star Industries is led by Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela. Yes, she is also a member of our studio audience. And before I go further, I want to, well, first of all, let's hear it up for DC Omali Yeshitela. Really an honor to have you in the studio as a part of our studio audience tonight. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us as our studio audience here at the Uhuru House tonight in St. Petersburg. Thank you so much for being here, and to our tremendous audience online who is joining us. These are critical times, and the Black Power Blueprint project of the African People's Education and Defense Fund is part of that. So is the Black Star Industries. The Black Power Blueprint is concretely putting economic and political power into the hands of the African working class, and we will tell you more about that shortly. On tonight's webinar, we also have the honor to speak with Chairman Omali about the significance of the Black Power Blueprint, which is the party's main campaign, to not just in St. Louis, where it is currently headquartered, but to the world. And I am here in St. Petersburg, Florida tonight, broadcasting at the beautiful Uhuru House, 1245 18th Avenue South, a tremendous example of an institution in the hands of the African working class. And with us tonight, we are honored also to be joined by Gazi Kodzo, who is the Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party and a well-known internet commentator and humorist. It is an honor, Uhuru, Comrade Gazi.
Uhuru.
Uhuru. And we also have with us tonight the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, sitting directly to my right, and author of Overturning the Culture of Violence, Penny Hess. Chairwoman is in the house with us tonight. Welcome.
Uhuru, Jamie, thank you so much. It's so great to have you here, and it is an honor for me to be able to be here, and certainly with salute Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Secretary General Gazi Kodzo, the studio audience, Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela. This is an amazing, amazing web event tonight. And before we begin this profound interview that we're going to be able to have with Chairman Omali Yeshitela tonight, I just want to say a few things and to remind people of what we're doing here. And I want to start by saying that I am a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the organization of white people that works directly under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, that we work in the white communities based on the understanding that we forward this strategy for African liberation, for the unification and liberation of Africa and African people everywhere, and that our work and our mission, so to speak, our mandate, is to recognize that all white people sit on the pedestal of the enslavement of African people, on the colonization of Africa, the colonization of the entire world, and genocide against the indigenous people and so many peoples on this planet. So that we owe reparations. And our theme, as Comrade Jesse Neville, who's also in the house tonight, chair of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, took out in the campaign for mayor led by the party, the Uhuru Movement last year. Our slogan is unity through reparations. Uhuru. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. And first of all, I want to let everybody know that we're very, very excited because we are broadcasting tonight, not only live streaming from Facebook, but we are broadcasting from our YouTube channel. We already have, I haven't even gotten to what we're trying to raise tonight, but I just want to raise, Comrade Bobby Wittenberg in the house. Stand up. Can you stand up? Can you stand up, Comrade Bobby? Uhuru!
That's how taking stand.
And thank you so much. That is such a stand of reparations, and you're one of our top donors to this project. really salute you. $150 tonight.
Oh,
So, wow. And we only have $850 because we always have a goal of $1,000. But let me just say a few things. Also, if you have not gone to the Black Power Blueprint YouTube page, which you do by going to youtube.com/blackpowerblueprint, please go there and subscribe and get notifications. We're really working to build that channel and to, really expand our base. We want to be at 5,000 subscribers by the end of this year and go on to 1 million and beyond to really build this base so that more and more people here and all around the world can know what the Black Power Blueprint project is and what this struggle for dual and contending power that we're going to be able to talk to Chairman Omali Yeshitela about tonight, which is so powerful and unique inside the borders of the United States and around the world, and to understand the depth of the party's position on this. So I just want to say quickly that the Black Power Blueprint is based in St. Louis right now, although in so many ways there are Black Power Blueprints of the African People's Socialist Party all around the country and world, but in Philadelphia, the Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles, in Oakland, California, Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles out there, Uhuru Foods and Pies, and here in St. Pete, there's Uhuru Foods and Pies, the Uhuru Houses. There's so many, so much of the handprint of this struggle for dual and contending power on the ground in so many places. But it came together in St. Louis in such a profound way following, Chairman will talk about it tonight, but following the police murder of 18-year-old Mike Brown in 2014. Chairman will talk about that history and how the party began under the leadership and the coordinatorship of Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela, who's been out and went out to St. Louis a year ago, began buying city-owned property and putting this project on the ground. So now there's the Uhuru House that we've seen, and we saw it last week with the big reveal, which was so amazing and beautiful. It shows the transformation of the Uhuru House and the depth of how much the African community of O'Fallon neighborhood in St. Louis, historic African community, loves the deep love and that they have for this project, for the African People's Socialist Party, and for the future that it provides. And as we know, as many of us know, that the Uhuru House is at 4101 West Florissant Avenue in St. Louis, and that also coming up after we finish this phase, there will be the renovation of a building at Goodfellow Avenue that is going to be the Jico Kitchen, a beautiful, beautiful building that is well known in that city. So we have so much more to go, but with your support, we have raised $43,126. Wow. So that is 95% of our phase 1 and phase 2 goals put together. And we are almost there. We're only $1,875 short, or now less than that, that we can raise towards the 45,000, and we're going to have a few more weeks in this phase. And I mean, we want to go to 50,000 because we know that 40,000 isn't enough. 45,000 is not enough to do the work.
As much as your average teacher would make in the white world. There are a lot of people for whom that's just a salary.
That's just a middle-class white salary at best. So we want to go ahead and try to work to raise the 50,000 minimally before we end out the second phase here. I also want to say that part of what we're raising money for in this phase 2 is the demolition of the 2 buildings across the street from the Uhuru House, and that's going to make way for a One Africa, One Nation marketplace. And that demolition starts tomorrow, so yes, very, very exciting. And everybody who has contributed reparations and support for this, wow, you can see these resources in action. You can see what this is going to be. So we're going to go live tomorrow with that. We don't know exactly what time, so please be on call and get a notification or whatever it is that you're going to get.
We do want to salute all of you who have given so generously towards this project, this crucial project, and sometimes repeatedly Bobby Wittenberg here just being one example, and we're going to be reading more tremendous comrades who have shared so generously and cite all those instances. In particular,
this is just in, during the big reveal till now, this is all the people that have given, and we really want to salute you. I also want to salute Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela, who's one of the leading donors going to the project, but we're just going to say this list really quick, because we can't thank and acknowledge people and salute them enough. So,
Alyssa Afonina, we want to thank you, comrade, for your generous contributions.
And repeated just over and over again. Alyssa, really salute you. Uhuru, and you really take the stand of unity through reparations. We also have another Alyssa Kaufman, and Allison Haney, who has given so much.
Of course, Amanda Carlozzi, comrade, thank you. Your stance is incredible.
Of course, Bobby Wittenberg, who is just amazing. Almost every week has really taken a stand of unity through reparations. Salute you again. And
Dewan Smith, I'm hoping that I'm doing justice to your name. This was an incredible stance, your contributions. This is material solidarity. This is the concrete vision of an African nation liberated and self-governing. Thank you.
We have Gregory Pfister, Janie Archie, Janice Kant, Jesse Novelsky.
Jesse.
Who's that? We have Johan Bedingfield.
Johan.
Catherine Mackey, KC, Mads Ambrose.
We have Marissa Laufer. We have Maureen Wagner. Thank you so much. We have Penny Hess. I have to read your name. You yourself are a repeat contributor. Thank you, Penny Hess. We have Renee Nassar, who is in the room helping with this webinar. We have the fantastic Ruby Gettelson.
Yes.
Ruby.
Shannon Eccles, Stephanie Midler, Susan Mortimer,
Zane Dixon.
I think is one of the contractors or workers, African workers that worked on it that we saw during the big reveal. And if you haven't seen that yet, you will be able to see it on our YouTube page, youtube.com/blackpowerblueprint, so please go there. Also, who do we have? Ann Hirsch.
Ann Hirsch, the one and only.
Bakari Olatunji, Janice Bryant, who is a key worker at the furniture store in Philadelphia. Kitty Riley, who's one of the coordinators from APSC under the leadership of Deputy Chair out in St. Louis. Sucha Sura, who we know from Oakland, California. Amazing comrade. I saw your picture at Maker Faire a few weeks ago. Yvette St. Ange, Ruth Miro, Alyssa Afonina again, Ifosa Amafidan, Alyssa Muteba, Shinabu Wamunda, Jeffrey Gottfried, David Reardon.
Thank you, David Redbeard Reardon.
Yes, Uhuru, Ann Hirsch, Janet Calcaterra, and Sheridan Boyle. So these are just in the last week or so. Salute you. So we want to say that, you know, during this, you can do this now. We're going to have the honor of talking to Chairman Omali Yeshitela and ask you to go to youcaring.com/blackpowerblueprint. Go ahead and put in your reparations, your donation, your support for the Black Power Blueprint tonight, and let us make our goal of $45,000 in the next period and $1,000 tonight. So.
And just to say in the pause, if you're watching this and you haven't shared already on whatever format you're watching, please share, spread the word that this conference, this webinar is happening, that we're going to be speaking with Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party and Secretary General Gazi Kodzo, also of the African People's Socialist Party, about the Black Power Blueprint. And please spread the word. This is how we get the word out about African internationalism, and this is how we raise the resources that's making such a difference.
And there was one other thing we wanted to say, but I forgot what.
I'm sorry. Well, maybe you could help remind our listeners what they're sharing, where we're broadcasting on. Okay. First of all, there's the Facebook site they can go to. Yes, there is. And you can also go to YouTube.
YouTube.com/blackpowerblueprint. So I would like to, it's very much my honor to go ahead and be able to address Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who has been struggling and fighting for and leading the struggle for African liberation for the leadership of the African working class for over 50 years, and not only developed the theory and worldview of the African working class called African internationalism, but made everything in this theory a reality on the ground. That's what sets the African People's Socialist Party aside from everybody else in the world today. And it is a beautiful vision. So, and I know that the party is getting ready to hold its 7th Congress. That will be October 6th to the 12th in St. Louis. And Chairman, thank you so much. It's a very deep honor for you to be able to come on to this web event tonight and to speak to the people. If people have any questions or comments, you can put them in the chat of either YouTube or the live stream. So please, please do that, and we will check them and see, you know, if we can raise them. But Chairman, we wanted to talk about this question of dual and contending power, something that I know that the party introduced a long time ago into the discussion of the whole struggle of the African liberation movement. And I was wondering if you could say a little bit about that and why this is called the Black Power Blueprint and not a struggle against racism or something else. If you could address something about that.
Uhuru. First of all, I really want to thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I want to join with everybody who has saluted Comrade Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela. When we talk about the Black Power Blueprint Project, the campaign that we're involved in, it's impossible to do that without mentioning the role that Comrade Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela has played in bringing this thing to fruition. And that is an understatement that I've just made. When a meeting we had just the other day, we talked about how this comrade went to St. Louis to be there for a couple of weeks, and ended up having been there just about a year now, and took on the task of learning how to do much of what had to be done in terms of acquiring the properties that are part of the Black Power Blueprint, learning how to get contractors who would do this work, and not just getting contractors, but winning them politically. Anybody who has watched the video or watched the reveal live heard contractors who were saluting Comrade Omali Yeshitela, and then the contractors themselves who were making contributions. And I should say, I'm saying contractors, but what we're really talking about skilled workers, African skilled workers who are self-employed, necessarily so. And so I wanted to just salute this comrade who we talked about working in that building herself, in particular the one on West Florissant, sometimes in a building at temperatures of 105 degrees and with no air conditioning, no fans, because you couldn't use fans because of the dust that was in there anyway, and sometimes being in freezing weather in the wintertime. So, I mean, actually working, and I just wanted to salute her. She's just and she left her home, lived, under very difficult circumstances, and I want to, offer my appreciation to all of our donors, because most of you are aware that you're not engaged in some kind of. This is a real campaign, and most people are aware made a conscious decision to unite with a political party, a political organization, a revolutionary political party, and made a conscious determination to participate in giving reparations as a part of uniting yourselves with the struggle for African liberation. And I cannot overstate the significance of what it is that you're doing. And so here we are now. We're talking about the Black Power Blueprint, and one manifestation of this Black Power Blueprint we are talking about is the project that's happening in St. Louis. But the reality is that most of our work has been about the struggle for dual power. Now, dual power is something that you're hearing more and more coming from different kinds of groups today, because people borrow language, and but it means something different to us than what we've heard people use the term to mean now. In fact, I coined the term dual power in something like 1977, 1978, I wrote a paper, and this is the first time that you will ever see the term dual power used that's applied to the struggle of African people. And the reason, one reason that when we talk about dual power, we mean something quite different from what we've seen others who use the term to mean. Dual power is an anti-colonial concept. It is a dual and contending power. You know, we went through a period in the 1960s, or after the 1960s, more like the 1970s and 80s, where Africans were creating what they call independent institutions. You know, they created a school over here, which was really important, and other kind. But these schools were not in contention with the existing social system. They were not even in contention with the existing school system. When we talk about dual power, we're talking about a power of African people who are colonized and who have to have power on our own lives. This is what revolutionary movements all around the world have been about. They've been about capturing political power, but some people like to put the struggle of African people in this box, where as opposed to struggling to get power over our lives, we are supposed to struggle to make white people like us. We are supposed to struggle against what they call racism, which means making white people like us, or changing ourselves so that we become more acceptable to white people. But this is not about white people. This is about African people having control of our lives. We want power. We have to have power. And I think we've raised something like more than $40,000 for this campaign alone. And no anti-racism could do anything for us. Those $40,000, that's material solidarity.
Yes.
We're not asking, even if you don't like me, that's not the question. Is can you unite with the struggle of African people to be free, to be in charge of our own affairs, to be in control of our own lives? And that's what the struggle for power, and that's an anti-colonial demand. And this whole question of racism and anti-racism, it's a gimmick, it's a scam. It's something that is used to diffuse the struggle for African people. It takes us on some kind of trajectory that instead of trying to fight for our own power, we're trying to be involved in perfecting the system of oppression that has us in this situation in the first place. So we're not about trying to do that. And I know that there are many people who are donors, who are participating in this webinar right now, who are watching this webinar right now, are quite dissatisfied with all of the charity work that you've done in the past, because it hasn't led to anything. And I think people appreciate being able to unite with the Project for actual liberation, for freedom. This is not a begging, pleading kind of movement. This is a movement that has assumed for itself the responsibility to be free, and it's a movement that has given white people who want to, white people who are part of a colonizer nation, an opportunity to break from the colonizer and to unite with the struggle of the colonized to be free. And that's part of the way that will bring real unity between the peoples inside this country. And for many people, you recognize that capitalism is a dirty crime that against all of the people that has its origin in slavery and colonialism. This is the way out of capitalism. This is the way out of this negative kind of relationship that white people are burdened with the rest of the world. And so we see the people who are donors here, who are participating in this webinar, as really being in the vanguard of a struggle to change the relationship that white people have with the rest of us, and to participate in the struggle for reparations and in the struggle against colonialism. So it's a very important project, and it's a very important opportunity, and I'm hoping that people can continue to to demonstrate your solidarity, make the kinds of contributions that will forward this anti-colonial movement that we're involved in, and it is an anti-colonial movement. And I want to say that because there are people who are participating in this webinar now, who are watching this webinar. There are people who are donors, who have donated to causes, uniting with the people in Vietnam, uniting with the people in El Salvador, uniting with other people who were struggling against colonialism. We're fighting the same monster of solidarity with the struggle for African liberation. And I'm happy that we give you an opportunity to do that, to unite with the anti-colonial struggle of African people. So that's what Black Power is.
Thank you, Chairman. And I do want to acknowledge Tama Gadini, who gave $20 in reparations tonight. And so we're at $170 towards our $1,000 tonight of reparations and support for the Black Power Blueprint. And thank you very much, Chairman, for that profound question and discussion that you have been laying out here. And, you know,
let me say,
okay.
One of the things that makes this dual power struggle so important, the way the party does this is not just to set up some kind of institution. This is a project in the hands of the African working class. And the class has to have power for us to be free. And so you have, you know, I've heard of this plan over here, this project over there, and it's to set up something, but it's not something that is in the possession of the African working class itself or an African working class organization. And that's what the party is. The party is the advanced detachment. It is the general staff of the African working class and the colonized African nation. And so when we do these projects, again, it's not just an event. It's not just setting up some kind of institution on its own, but it's in contention with the ruling class, in contention with colonialism, and it is in the possession of the African working class. And that's the critical thing, that nobody else, even when they take these names, they borrow, you know, terms and concepts like dual power. They mean something entirely different than we do. We say we are preparing to govern, and that the solidarity that you demonstrate contributes to that. So that's the project that we're involved in. I want to just again, you know, express profound appreciation for your participation.
Uhuru, Chairman, that is so powerful. I just want to say, there's no place in the world where, there's no place else in the world where something like this is going on unless it's led by the party, the African People's Socialist Party. It is inspiring. It is inspiring to North American white people as well. And I want to say that, you know, for people to go to youcaring.com/blackpowerblueprint to give, to go ahead and put in your support, your reparations tonight. And Chairman, actually before we went online today, you were talking about two different tendencies, really, that have always been in the African liberation movement for back 100 years and more. The question of struggling for dual power, for liberation and versus assimilation. And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's really important because, you know, one of the most important figures in the history of the struggle of African people in this country is a man named W.E.B. Du Bois. And most people define Du Bois in the context of the struggle that he had with Booker T. Washington. Right. One was supposed to be conservative Booker T. Washington because he was saying, cast down your buckets where you are, telling African people to just you know, become efficient and make yourself competent and capable, and teaching African people, you know, how to do things. And the other was Du Bois, who was an integrationist and an assimilationist, and had a serious struggle with Booker T. Washington. And when we went to school, when I went to school, Du Bois was taught to us as the right guy, and Booker T. Washington was the bad guy because he didn't want to integrate, he didn't want to assimilate. Well, Garvey was really impressed by what Booker T. Washington did. He established Tuskegee Institute that was a technical training. It was a training institute. It still exists today. So he was impressed by that. He organized, Garvey did, the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA Improvement Association, and the Universal Negro Improvement Association and Africans Community League. And this was a movement for African people to reclaim our power. He said, I looked around the world, Garvey did, and I looked for our presidents, I looked for our prime ministers, I looked for our heads of state, and I couldn't see them, so I decided I would help to make them. And he set out to organize independence, freedom, and he really pushed the concept of Africa for Africans. Africa for Africans, those at home and those abroad. And home was Africa, the continent of Africa. And it was an organization that was embraced by millions of African people, millions, literally millions. And there were 6 to 11 million Africans who were part of that organization. And, you know, we're talking about something like 1919, they had a convention, the Negro Convention of the World, 1919, in New York. And they had from 25 to 50,000 Africans from around the world, that was 1920, attended that convention. And this is where you get the red, black, and green flag. Africans voted on that. That's our flag. Africans voted, this is our flag. Africans voted Garvey as the provincial established various kinds of industrial projects. He is the one who initiated the whole black dolls, the black Jesus, the recording studios, various other kinds of institutions to bring Africans into economic life. And he also, with the Black Star Line, attempted to initiate trade that will unite African people, an international economic independent trade relationship that will hook African people into a single actual nation. And he was opposed, that Du Bois opposed that movement. And in fact had said that for a long period of time, that Africans in the United States should just be concentrated on work for black people in the United States. And that actually made stupid statements at one point that Africans in the United States couldn't even live in Africa because we couldn't tolerate the weather, some silliness. Now, this is not a dumb man. Du Bois was a very well-educated. He was more educated than most educated white people. Du Bois was a very erudite person, so he was not a stupid person. He knew better than this, but he had a kind of contempt for, first of all, the working class, and so he fought Garvey. And he fought Garvey to such an extent that by the way, Du Bois was one of the people selected by the group of white people who created the NAACP. They selected Garvey as one of the persons who should, not Garvey, but Du Bois, as one of the people who should be in that organization. They wouldn't bring in people like Ida B. Wells, by the way, because she was too black. They wouldn't bring in people like Trotter, because he was too black. But Du Bois, and Du Bois became the editor of their magazine called The Crisis. And so he was very influential in the NAACP, and it's from that base in the NAACP, Du Bois actually worked with the federal government of the United States to oppose Garvey, and became a part of a whole campaign to put Garvey in jail. And they did. They jailed Garvey, and then they kicked him out of the country. And as soon as Garvey was kicked out of the country, and he could no longer initiate the conventions that they usually had in August, when they kicked Garvey out of the country, then Du Bois, in the August, the date that Garvey usually would have had his convention, Du Bois initiated a convention himself in Harlem, and one of the slogans was Africa for Africans. So this is Du Bois, and so there's been this tendency within the African liberation movement. There's a sector of the African population that suffers extreme self-alienation. That's very difficult to identify with being black, with being an African, etc., and certainly with being a working class African. Now, Du Bois was brilliant. He wrote some extraordinary books, and some of them that we can find helpful even today when we're reading about Africa. He knew about Africa. But it was a tendency that was opposed to the whole notion that Africans would be able to have power over our own lives. And so what Du Bois did was he organized something called the Pan-Africanist Congress. He was one of the first leaders of the political movement around Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism, the concept existed before then, but he was a leader of the first movement. In fact, Du Bois had condemned Garvey because Garvey had criticized the British Empire and British imperialism at one point.
Wow.
Du Bois had denounced Garvey for that, and to do the first Pan-Africanist Congress that happened in Paris, France, in 1919. Du Bois who organized that had to promise that that they were not going to criticize French imperialism. And you know, so you had representatives of the French government and what have you who were there at this this thing that Du Bois created. So he worked with the U.S. government to help jail Garvey, help kick Garvey out of the country. And then, as a part of the process, anti-Garvey process, they created the Pan-Africanist movement as a political movement, an active political movement. And so those are the two high examples of the tendency for self-determination, absolute liberation of Africa and African people, and the tendency for assimilationist. And even though Du Bois became a Pan-Africanist, Pan-Africanism didn't mean that that Africans would see Africa as a homeland, that we're supposed to go to Africa, although Du Bois, interestingly enough, died in Ghana after Nkrumah became president. And Nkrumah, who said that his greatest influence was reading the works of Marcus Garvey. And there's the Du Bois Center in Ghana today, right across from the U.S. Embassy in Accra. That Nkrumah, was responsible for putting there. So he's supposedly had an epiphany later on in his life. He died at 93, something like that. So anyway, those tendencies have always existed, and they exist today. Right now, as we have in this discussion, there are people who belatedly discovering some of the things that we're talking about, but still hold on to the same kind of politic that was represented by Du Bois and assimilationists, which do not do anything for empowering African people, and that's what we're about. Uhuru.
Uhuru, I just really appreciate and, I'm honored to be able to hear you lay out this difference between Du Bois and Marcus Garvey and how these same struggles play out today. And before I turn it over to Gazi Kodzo, I just want to announce a few more donors here. We have Janice Kant gave $50 tonight in reparations. I want to say Uhuru, that's powerful. And Rose Roby, who's here, $20. So we have raised $240 tonight. We're almost a quarter of the way to our goal. And we only have $750.
We can do this.
Oh, and Johan?
Just gave $10.
Johan
right,
Bettingfield, $10. So we're at a quarter of the way to our goal tonight, and we want to salute everyone who has given tonight. Uhuru. And Gazi Kodzo.
Uhuru, Chairman. First, I just really want to appreciate and unite with what Penny said, just to hear that summation between W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey was amazing, and really appreciate that. And I want to
Gazi, that they've disappeared. They raised up Du Bois, but the ruling class in this country and most of the erudite thinking representatives of white power who have black faces, university professors and stuff, they've disappeared Garvey.
Yes.
And or when they mention Garvey, they mention him as a part of a how do you say the word?
Panoply?
Panoply of a Pan-Africanist. You know, say here the Pan-African, Du Bois, and they mention Garvey, and they have to because you can't show any evidence of any kind of success by the Pan-Africanists. But Garvey was the one who built the movement when they mention him. But most of them, you won't go to a university and read about Marcus Garvey. You will not find books by Garvey on the university shelves, but you will find Du Bois.
Yes.
Tons and tons and tons of stuff by Du Bois because he represented a tendency that was amenable to colonialism and neocolonialism. In fact, put forth a theory of the so-called talented 10th. And the talented 10th percent of the African population, the educated, erudite, upper class, were supposed to be given authority by the U.S. Ruling class to govern the rest of us. So this is who Du Bois was. And again, he was a brilliant man. And I think people should read some of the stuff that Du Bois has written. But he also was a petty bourgeois assimilationist who actually actively worked with the federal government to destroy the Garvey movement and created and initiated a political Pan-Africanist movement as an attack on the Garvey movement. And Garvey was quite proud of saying that he was not a Pan-Africanist. In fact, he referred to himself as an African fundamentalist. You know, so I just wanted to, you know, add that to the discussion. Yeah,
really appreciate that, Chairman, and totally unite. Like you said, Marcus Garvey's totally like erased from anything on those kind of college campuses or school campuses, and they pushed W.E.B. Du Bois entirely. So really, thank you for that and carrying the history of Marcus Garvey. So my question is that you know, the north side of St. Louis is where the Africans reside, is in the north side of St. Louis. And I know that, you know, the party is there. Could you explain to the people the conditions of the north side of St. Louis where the Africans reside?
Well, they're difficult because this is where you find the impact of colonialism concentrated in St. Louis, is in the north side, where the African community is also concentrated. And so you find the same kinds of issues. You find poverty, you find violence, you find deteriorating structures, houses, buildings deteriorating. It's an extraordinary thing to behold. I didn't even know that bricks and things like that could deteriorate in a fashion. It's almost like when people leave them and leave them for a period of time, then it's almost like the structure itself recognizes that there's nobody using it anymore, and you can actually see, you know, like the structures coming down. So that's one side of what St. Louis is. But the other side of St. Louis, the most important, is that you have an incredible history, culture, I mean, rich African culture in St. Louis, so deeply ingrained that it's sort of the way people are. It's not even thought of as culture. You know, Miles Davis came from St. Louis, and Chuck Berry came from St. Louis, and there were all kinds of really important forces like that who came from St. Louis. But it's a normal. And the thing that I really appreciate about St. Louis, and I tell it all the time to people who are there, that it reminds me so much of Africa. Just this deep sort of unity in the community, and this sounds strange because there is a lot of horizontal violence. I mean, in St. Louis, there's any place you find colonialism, you will find horizontal violence at first. That horizontal violence, as Fanon teaches us, ultimately turns into vertical violence and begin to identify who the oppressor is and direct it that way. That's what I saw in Ferguson when I was there, that the horizontal violence had become almost absent, and what you saw was the deep kind of solidarity and unity among the people because they had identified the enemy for that period of time. And then, of course, that movement got hijacked by dilettantes and people who were just opposed to a victory of the African working class. But it is deep and profound kind of unity, and I love it. I mean, it's one of those places where you can go to, like, neighborhood associations and around the country are places that are bastions of, police activity and things like that. And I don't know if the cops hang around in neighborhood associations in St. Louis or not, but I do know this, that you can go into those meetings in St. Louis and you can talk about Black Power Blueprint, and the people really appreciate and they want that. It is a deep kind of unity that's there in St. Louis among the people. And now a difference is that for the first time, the people have their own revolutionary political party, and which makes a profound difference. Anybody who's seen, for example, the reveal, the live reveal, or the video of the reveal, and see, how ordinary, these are people who, like, just African, working people, skilled workers, contractors who worked on the building and were mind blown because of the political line, and united with the political line, and who gave money back to us, and who said that they didn't even charge us the way they would have charged some other things, and actually said that when they came and saw what it was that we were doing, they would have done it for free, and some of them almost did it for free. One contractor gave us $4,000, just in the work that he did in terms of the price of the work. So it's really deep, and there's a real movement of African people on the ground, and it can only exist because there's a party there now that they can gravitate to that can provide the leadership. And that's one of the things that's significant about what we're doing, about the Black Power blueprint, and how it inspires an entire community. If you see the reveal, and I'm suggesting that people should find that. I mean, there's somebody who is on YouTube page. You will see how people talked about how that work on West Florissant, 4101 West Florissant, on that corner has changed the entire community, and people are saying it's changing the African community of North St. Louis. And that's because they have their own party now. And it's no politician had anything, no what do you call them, elected official. This is something that was done by the African working class with the support of you who are providing reparations, who made the choice to unite with the struggle against colonialism. I'm impressed by it, and I'm moved by it when I see these Africans who come into our building. I see Africans who suffering various kinds of social contradictions in the community, who will get dressed up and come to our Sunday meetings, just the obvious difference that they experience with as a consequence. People say, I've lived here all my life, and I've seen the change in the community over the years, and now to see the community coming back is very inspirational. And the Black Power Blueprint has done that, and cadre has done that, having real revolutionary cadre on the ground. That's what's done that, you know.
Thank you for that, Chairman. And from my own visits in St. Louis, it is clear to see that there's a lot of members of the movement there, and the party is definitely there in St. Louis, and the support, just the overwhelming support of the community. Like whenever I'm there, they're just so appreciative, so thankful, want to know how to get involved. And I just want to know, like, how did the party begin to build there? Well, the people want to know, I know.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, we've been seeing Africans killed by police in this country over and over again. It was almost like an epidemic. It still is to some extent. But that would happen. There would be no meaningful kind of response from the African community. You'd have a reverend, some reverend or another, who would come in and say a militant prayer, exhaust the people, emotionally and what have you, and then there was no outcome. And this was the African petty bourgeoisie. And then what happened in Ferguson, when this young brother got killed in Ferguson, the first persons we heard from was not Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson. We heard from the Africans who live on Canfield Drive, right there in the heart of the working class community, Canfield Drive. And what we heard from them was not a prayer. They was chanting, "Kill the police." And this was, police are killing us all over the place, and most of our people who are participating, who are viewing this, probably don't have any idea of the ongoing horrible aggression by the police in our communities, strip searching in public, get on the ground, just horrible, insulting, ongoing, daily stuff, and especially among young Africans. The young Africans were saying, "Kill the police." And that struck me, that there was something different that was there, that the Sharptons and Jacksons and others had not yet contaminated the situation, so it was possible then for us to go in. And I went into Ferguson. And it was an extraordinary experience, because when I got to Ferguson, of course, by now, you're seeing that virtually almost there are more sellouts in Ferguson sent to Ferguson. You would find them there than per square inch in any place in the world, And but there were also, African people from the middle class and even a couple of churches that were really mobilized by the energy of the masses of the people there. And so when I got there, I happened to pick up a microphone right on Canfield Drive, right on the street, right across from the spot where Mike Brown had been killed, on August 9th, and began to speak to the people. And the people responded, extraordinarily well. Some media happened to be there. None of this was planned. We didn't ask the media to be there, and something that got said, you know, sort of went viral. And in fact, one of the preachers one preacher had his entire congregation there and invited me to come speak to his church, something I didn't take him up on right away. And then, you know, just began to organize and participate in the mobilizations and stuff like that. And we met Africans who were from Ferguson, St. Louis. And some of them are in the party today because of the marches that we participated in. And of course, on August 30th of 2014, Mike Brown was killed on August 9th on 2014. On August 30th, now we are a part of what's supposed to be some kind of coalition, the party is, and there was this march and rally called for where the people were told that the march was going to leave Canfield Drive where Mike Brown was killed, and it was going to go to the march on the police station. And the Africans were angry, and that's exactly what they wanted to do. Instead, the leaders of this thing marched to a deserted park, and which, you know, a lot of people were offended when they first saw that. And then they had this long program where they were speaking. And then when it was time for me to speak on the platform, they literally, when I may have been on the platform, I may have been up there for maybe 15 seconds before I was literally grabbed and pushed off the platform when I said the word revolution. And but by now the people are leaving anyway, so I joined with the people. And we went to the police station. And outside the police station, where thousands of Africans were there, I had an opportunity to speak to that crowd, and that changed everything in terms of being able to establish our presence in the St. Louis Ferguson area. We recruited this wonderful comrade, Kalambai Andernet, who is now the international president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, but who had never been involved in any kind of movement before. She just happened to walk with us when we were marching, hearing the discussions that I was having with the comrade who was with me, and then saying that I want to be in touch with this. And that's how it happened. And then since that time, as you mentioned, Comrade Ghazi, we have a movement. We have an organization. The party's there. NPDM is there. The Uhuru Solidarity Movement is there. African People's Solidarity Committee is there. We have a movement there. And we are the only force that's remaining. You know, all the people who came there, all of the groups who came there to hijack this movement, the cameras are gone and the money is gone that was brought in by Soros and what have you. And so we are the only force that actually built organization. And because the people were complaining even during the times of all these protests, like, what's the objective? What's the end? What are we fighting for? And we provided revolutionary answers to that question. And we are on the ground now with the Black Power Blueprint. As I mentioned, we put organization on the ground. We're searching for a place to have our offices and things like that. And Comrade Omali Yeshitela went there for the purpose of being there for 2 weeks. And as I said, she was there for a year or so. But within a matter of 6 months, we had built this Uhuru House. We acquired these properties, make the Uhuru House happen. And we're just mentioning now the Black Power Blueprint. In the Black Power Blueprint, we're just mentioning the Uhuru House, across the street, the place that's going to be demolished, the two places going to be demolished to put together the One Africa, One Nation marketplace. We mentioned the boathouse that we've acquired on Longfellow, Goodfellow, where we're going to put the Uhuru Bakery and Kitchen, and Jiko Kitchen, and things like that. But you know, we've acquired other properties too, because we're going to have at the Goodfellow location, in addition to having the bakery cafe, we're also having a workforce development program. So that's directed at Africans who are coming out of prison, who run into this wall of being able to be employed, to be able to get skills and whatever. They'll be able to do that in our project. And we bought properties where we can even begin to house some of those people who participate in that project. So that's what we've done just in this very short period of time.
Chairman, thank you for that answer. Lots of African people, contractors and workers have participated in the renovation of the Uhuru House and expressed so much support. Can you talk about the role and response of African workers in that neighborhood in St. Louis as a whole to the Black Power Blueprint?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, I heard just today where 4 young people, young Africans who just came in and joined the work, volunteered to participate in the work, and these are young Africans. They, you know, but that's what a movement and party, we are attracting a lot of young people because they can see the future and what it is that we're doing. You know, it's not, you know, one of these geriatric projects that, you know, I mean, it's young people are attracted because they can see the future there. And so, and the workers, you know, the Black Power Blueprint gives an opportunity for the workers to experience their own value, their own worth, not just as tools to be utilized by the ruling class, by white power, etc., but they are participating in building their own community, and we give them the opportunity to do this. This is not something like this. I've forgotten how many properties that's owned by the city of St. Louis in North St. Louis. The city owns these properties. The city could be doing exactly what we're doing if it had an interest in doing, but it doesn't have an interest in doing it. And these black contractors could be hired by the city to revamp these neighborhoods that we're talking about, but they don't do that. They don't have an interest. But the African working class, the advanced detachment of the African working class, the general staff of the African working class has an interest in doing that, and that's what the party has been doing it. And the workers, you know, who hear people say that we are a party of the working class, that we don't make any pretensions or even act like we desire to be a part of the system of the establishment. We are the working class, the establishment that looks down on African workers, that treats African workers so badly. Now they have an opportunity, and they do happily unite with this project. And then in the neighborhood, where the work, because this is a working class community. In fact, it's one of the poorest working class communities that we're in. And the people can see their community being transformed. These are workers seeing their community being transformed. I'm not talking about some trade union stuff. I'm talking about where the working class, the colonial subjects live in these communities. They go to work at the so-called point of production, but otherwise in the colony, they live at the point of the bayonet. And it's these workers, you know, who really unite with what it is that we're doing, because they see what's happening to their own community and they can see the possibilities. In just a few weeks from now, certainly no more than a few months, we will have one of the people provide with the marketplace. And the implications are profound, because it means that some money can at least begin to recirculate inside the community itself. It means that people who live in this community that's in looked down on, and I say looked down on when, D.C. Honor and I moved in this community ourselves. And when people heard we were living in that community, that was astonishing to them. You live there? You know, that was astonishing, because they consider that like a word, you know, very troublesome and troubled community and dangerous, etc. But we're not afraid of Africans, you know what I mean? And so we're there with the African working class, and people have a tremendous amount of respect for us, because they know we respect the African working class and hold the working class up very high, and this is their organization. We recruit them into their party, the African working class. And if you look at Comrade Kalambayi as an example, who is the president of NPDUM and also a member of the Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, I mean, she's stone working class, a working class mother with 2 small children. This is no uppity Negro that we're talking about. And they see in us, they're talking about the class. And they have a tremendous amount of respect for that reality. And so I just wanted to say that. And that's the working class. That's the future of Africa and African people. And they really appreciate being able to participate in a project that's going to uplift our community. And
Okay, Chairman, that is so powerful what you're laying out. And I want to say to people watching tonight, there is no place in the world that we can hear about or see tangibly on the ground a project like this, work like this, something that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has always done to think outside the box, never compromised with imperialism, never tried to make concession to or a way to live with the oppression and colonization of African people, but always fought for the liberation, the total liberation of Africa and African people. And, you know, I just really want to salute that, because there was a time when maybe you could hear Che Guevara, you could hear Vietnam, you could find out about that, you could see the struggles of African people inside this country, but the U.S. waged a war, a counterinsurgency war, that wiped out both, you know, in some cases militarily, in some cases economically, the revolutions around the world. And the chairman is the only one that's still there. And when he is speaking for the liberation of African working class, he's speaking for all oppressed and colonized peoples in the world. And even in our interest as white people. And I just want to thank some people who have taken a stand tonight and given resources. I want to salute Allison Haney, gave $50. Melissa St. Pierre, $20 tonight. Melissa. Diane Tournay, $25 tonight. And Kathira Barron, $20 tonight. So we have raised $365. No, we have, raised $365 tonight. We only need $635 to our total of $1,000. I want to put in the $35 to make it that we will just do $600. I want to put in $35 tonight. And I want to say to the white people who are listening that we have a role in this. We have a responsibility, because we have been the colonizers. We have been the colonizing nation, and it's so important for us, right, Jamie, to be able to say this, to acknowledge this. And this is something that we've understood through the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. We couldn't come to this conclusion on our own.
Absolutely not.
We could only understand that this is a struggle against colonialism and that we are the colonizer nation. We have sat on the backs of the oppression of African people. We have participated in it. We have carried out colonial violence. We've done that with the lynchings and the torture and the terror against African people, and in picking up the gun against the indigenous people. And we have done this to feed our children, to walk up the ladder of success, to live at the expense of everybody else on the planet Earth. And right now, you know, we see a lot of white people committing suicide, becoming drug addicts, alcoholics, that even so much that the life expectancy for white people is declining for the first time ever. And we don't need to be doing that, because we don't need to commit physical suicide. We need to commit suicide as the colonizers and join African people and oppressed people on the planet Earth as they struggle for freedom and liberation that gives us a place under the leadership of the African Revolution to go into the white community to say that, you know, we have to win as many other white people as possible, and that recognize that a stand of reparations is not punitive. First of all, it's our responsibility, but it's liberating for us as white people. And I want to say that in this room, we have Rose Roby, who's here, and she is a member of the Green Party. She's a strong supporter of this movement and takes a stand of solidarity and for reparations. And both she and her mother and her mom have stood up and said how the stand of reparations to African people gave her life, made her, she didn't want to be active politically anymore, that she stood up in a meeting the other night and said that the stance of reparations has energized her, wants her to, you know, she wants to be out there changing the world, and she sees her place in it, in the correct and positive way that it gives us a future as well, because otherwise, what do we look forward to? You know, just millions of white people dying, committing suicide. So no, we can live, and we have to be part of solving the problems that this system has created for African people and the people on the planet Earth. We owe reparations. We must pay it. And this is what gives us the ability to live and to be part of humanity. It's a beautiful thing. And so taking a stand of reparations, we have Lisa Watson, $50 tonight.
All right, Lisa Watson.
And so we've raised $450, so we only have $550 more to raise tonight. We need to do that. We can do that. And you know, we just have a little over, what, 1,000, I'm sure there's left to raise overall on our goal of $45,000. We can do that. White people have social wealth,
yes,
right?
we do.
have social wealth, the ability stolen from Africans, living on the ground, the land, stolen from the indigenous people, that enables white people to pass this down from generation to generation and have the wealth. Because you know what, Jamie, I read that in Boston, as an example, that the average white family has $155,000 in assets. Wow. African people have $8. $8. That's not a typo. That's what the article said.
They might as well have said zero, or you know, permanently in debt.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly.
It's
so
offensive. And when the chairman
can't
says
live like that.
No, and this entire situation that it came about not at the point of production, but at the point of bayonet, is a kind way, a generous way of putting it in terms of the violence that we as white people carried out against African people, against indigenous people, and that we're carrying out today against Asian people, against Arab peoples. And this is how we enjoy this lifestyle that you're talking about. This is how we're able to maneuver through this world without worrying about tomorrow. You know, we can have this kind of carefree until the crisis of imperialism came, until the African liberation movement reared its head in such glorious resistance to what's going on. And the only movement in the world, when Chairwoman Penny says this, when Chairman Omali Yeshitela says this, when Secretary General Gazi Kodzo says this, they are speaking of objective truth. There is no other place, especially as a white person, that we could be involved in an anti-colonial movement, a vision of a world without oppressor and oppressed nations, and that when we're involved in it, it's not just an academic question, right? It's not just a theoretical question, and the thing that takes it out of theory and into the material world is the reparations.
Yes.
And that's what we appreciate so deeply. That's what's going to change the world.
Beautifully said, Jamie. That's really powerful. And I do want to salute Kristen Fortin, who's another, every week, a donor out there from Washington State. Uhuru to Kristen.
Uhuru.
And Sam Day from Boston, $5. So we have raised $495. We only need $505 to go to meet our goal tonight. So we're just about halfway there. We can do this. We can do this. And this, every single dime that is being turned over in reparations is a way of saying to white power must go. I divorce myself from that. I join the struggle and the struggle of humanity. Right. And I am turning back over not only stolen resources, not only also acknowledging hideous terror against African people, because we must take a moral stand as well, but also to say that this puts a stab wound into this blood-sucking system that is sucking the blood of African people every day, and it's turning the resources back over, because imperialism can't live for an hour, for a minute, without ripping off the resources of Africa and African people, and stealing the labor of African people every single day. So we want you to go to, we have Shannon Eccles, $50.
All right, Shannon.
So we only have $455 more to raise tonight. We're going to do this. We can do this because we have the resources. We can turn it back over. And I want people to go to youcaring.com/blackpowerblueprint and go ahead and put in resources. And I want to be able to go back to, the great honor that we have with Chairman Omali Yeshitela here today.
I wanted to follow up on something that you just said, because I think it's really important for our donors, for people who are participating in this webinar from the various platforms that's available to you. Because your presence, the work of the African People Solidarity Committee, the work of Uhuru Solidarity Movement, this participation that people are engaged in with the Black Power Blueprint Project, it is incredibly significant, more than I think most people will easily understand. Because the stance that you take, I mean, this is the party. The party has provided North Americans or white people an incredible opportunity to break from the tradition of white people. And the tradition, sometimes traditions happen as a consequence of a certain kind of historical inertia. That's just the way it's always been done. And unless somebody can step in and provide a way to lead out of this stuff so that you don't have to continue doing the same stuff that you've always done, the horrible stuff. And in fact, what has happened is so much violence and terror and duplicity has been visited upon the African community that when we organized the African People's Solidarity Committee in 1976, that it created a lot of suspicion on the part of a lot of Africans. I mean, we know about the slander that came from North American white people, especially those who call themselves leftists and communists and stuff like that. But in the African community too, a lot of suspicion. And it has been mentioned during this discussion that the United States government defeated the Black Revolution of the 1960s. It killed people. It assassinated people. You know, what easily comes to memory, of course, murders like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, but there were others, names of whom that many people don't know, and the number of people who were imprisoned, etc. So a lot of violence was visited upon the movement, so that at the time the party came into existence, it was on the tail end of this horrible violence that was coming from the United States government, and supported openly by most of the white people who in this country. And what we founded in 1976, was it? Yes. The African People's Solidarity Committee. And that was a major change. And the Solidarity Committee, at a time where the African Liberation Movement was very wounded, our party created the Solidarity Committee. And so then we were able to continue forwarding the African Revolution, even though the government had done everything it could to isolate the African Revolution, to kill us off, to jail us off, etc. We were able to do it because part of our strategy included organizing the Solidarity Committee. In the same way, in 1964, the strategy of SNCC had white people come into Mississippi, a part of Freedom Summer and what have you, for strategical reasons as well. So we created this organization. And as a consequence of creating this organization, part of what has happened is we're having this discussion right now. People were able to break free and to unite with the struggle for national liberation. This was not a struggle to move into your neighborhood, to marry your sister. It was a struggle to have national liberation, and you were able to unite with that. That made a profound difference. And now we have a situation where nobody's ever asked white people to do this.
Right.
You know, no, I mean, most African groups can't do it because they so careful to make sure they say nothing that would offend white people, and you can't build a relationship if you can't criticize people committing all these horrible acts against black people. You got to make the criticism. You got to say that you have to make some fundamental changes and transformation if you're going to live, if you're going to rescue yourself from the plight of what's going to happen with all of imperialism. And so this has been really important because now with the African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement, we have the ability to lead white people away from this. Somebody had to say it. Somebody had to provide the direction. It's like a demonstration. Sometimes you have a demonstration not because you think you're going to shut everything down, but you have a demonstration because you want to let other people who think the same thing that you think know that it's all right to think like that. And what we've done with creating this situation, we're telling white people, your instincts were good. Those who are on the right side, it's all right to think like this. It's all right to be against white power. It's all right to be united with black power. It's all right to pay reparations. It's all right to participate in this project. That's what we are doing, and the people who are participating now, the donors, are uniting with that, and a representative of what I believe is a much broader sector of the North American population than has been made obvious. And it couldn't be made obvious before because nobody was calling the question. Nobody was demanding that white people do what has to be done. And because white people have power, people have said to white people the things that they thought white people needed to hear. You know, so nobody would tell the truth. Nobody would do that, but this party does. And Black Power Blueprint gives white people an opportunity to unite against the tradition white people have enjoyed in this country and most of the world for the last 500-600 years. Yeah. So that's why this is a big thing that people are participating in, you are participating in. This is a big thing. And so I just want to express appreciation for those of you who can hear, who can see, because I truly believe that you are a vanguard of sorts that can provide leadership for white people who might want to do it if they had the courage to do it, if they could see other people who were doing it.
Uhuru, there's a question, as you guys are, a question from one of the chats online.
Uhuru. So Michael McDonald said, I keep hearing about reparations. How are they distributed? Who gets what? How much is enough reparations to how many generations?
Well, how many do you think you'll live in terms of generations? But the reality is it's not a hard question because we don't just talk about reparations, we do reparations. That's what this whole project is about, you know. So what are the reparations for? Right now it's for Black Power Blueprint. And you can participate in reparations, and this is a project that goes to the African working class, transforming the entire African community. So can you live with that? Now, I could tell you that I don't want you to give reparations, and I don't want you to be against colonialism, just like me. And that's what the anti-racist movement is about, just liking people. And that's you know, something that doesn't help anybody except the person who is being liked, you know. This is an opportunity for a concrete material manifestation of solidarity with oppressed people. We can figure it out. You don't have to worry. You will not live long enough to pay it back. You understand? You will not live that long. So don't worry about it, you know, how long it's going to take.
Also, I would just add that he's saying, I keep hearing about reparations. Yes, because the African People's Socialist Party made reparations a household word.
We keep talking about reparations, that's fine. Unless you suffer some other kind of problem that, you know, you hear things. But yeah, we keep talking about it, and it's going to be talked about. And you'll come around if you haven't already. You're probably just asking this question to be a certain kind of devil's advocate, et cetera, to generate more interest in the discussion. But yeah.
I want to turn it back over to Secretary General Ghazi. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman. The party has always been completely committed to solidarity with the indigenous people of this hemisphere.
Yes.
Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I think it's important because you got to remember that African people in our most recent appearance in this hemisphere came at gunpoint. We were here much earlier. But I don't want to have to go into all that history, right? And the only friends we had when we got here were the indigenous have you who obvious physical manifestation of the solidarity between Africans and the indigenous people. There's a group, you know, called like Seminoles, you know, like who, but not just Seminoles. There are Cherokees and other indigenous peoples with whom we lived, and sometimes we became what now is called chiefs and things like that, partially because they were under horrible aggression from white people, and because we knew white people, having been enslaved by white people, and we led military campaigns and forces and the so-called Indian Wars, especially in Florida and parts of Georgia, were efforts made by Jackson. This guy Jackson, you know, who somebody's putting on the other side of a $20 bill along with Harriet Tubman. Jackson, an slave-owning Indian killer, right? he waged this horrible war, and the war was essentially a war to recapture Africans who had escaped and moved into this area and lived with the indigenous people and become a part of the indigenous people. This was a war that was made against them. Jackson led that. So the indigenous people, were, like I said, the first, the only friends that we had at one point. And then the other thing about it is that near genocide was committed against the indigenous people. I mean, and they're still suffering today. We're talking about, like they like to talk about Columbus coming in here and stuff like that coming to this area. But the people are still suffering the consequences of this visit by white people that's taken land, taken resources, having people living in concentration camps called Indian reservations, where in some places there's no running water, there's no electricity. This is literally true. I've been to Big Mountain in Arizona and with the indigenous peoples. This is their land. And the loss of their land is something they are experiencing consequences of today. Then when you count the Spanish-speaking indigenous people, right, who are called by other names today, these people have caught hell. Even half of Mexico was just stolen. Half of Mexico was stolen. Trump talking about a wall. They stole half of Mexico, right? And the wall is to keep the tradition, the owners, the custodians of the land for coming back here. So the indigenous people are friends, and they suffer oppression and exploitation. And part of the basis of that exploitation, the critical aspect of it, is the theft of their land. And so here, the indigenous people are landless on their own land, right? And so has been a movement in this country in fighting against Garvey, fighting against the whole concept and identity of African people as Africans, and recognizing that the national homeland of black people is Africa. That is the national homeland. And it's opportunist to say that, okay, we've been here for a long time and somehow we're no longer Africans. And because I want to know what the due date is, right? Because, we got friends, who come here all the time from Africa to this country, and I have, tell them that you better get out of town, by such and such a date. Otherwise, you're going to turn into a new African or a Negro or something to that effect. It's just bogus, nonsensical, opportunist attempt. What you're doing is uniting with the oppression of the indigenous people to steal their land. And we have a homeland. But there are many Africans who don't want to recognize that because they have an affinity for white power, white people. They want to stay right here on somebody else's land. They like Kool-Aid and soda water and the other kinds of things that's made convenient to them here. So it's the only position of integrity that we can have. It doesn't say that everybody's going to get up and go back to Africa. That's not what I'm saying. I'm going as soon as we crush this monster here. But I would go now. I would go now, except this guy follows you wherever you go. He kills you. He wipes you out. So we have a responsibility here to do something to stop it. That's why I can't go home. Otherwise, I can tell you, I would have been there a long time ago. Every time I go to Africa, it's harder to come back to this place. But Africa is our national homeland. We concede that. We're not telling everybody pick up and get ready to go to Africa. There are a number of reasons why we don't do that. Not the reasons that you often hear, well, how we all get there is so impractical. How you all got here? You understand? It's going to be easier going back than it was coming. I guarantee you that. You understand? So that's not the question that we're talking about. There are other issues involved in this question because a lot of people are going to stay here. And that's going to come as a consequence of having a relationship of principle with the indigenous people. First of all, by not claiming their land. And by joining in the struggle with the indigenous people to take their land back. Because Africans, our revolution is in Africa, and we are also a part of the revolution of the Americas. In Ecuador, in Bolivia, in Brazil, in Houston, Texas, in all of these other places. We are part of the revolution of the Americas, and that means that we are united with the peoples of of this land that has been stolen from them, and we are united in everything they want to do to take back their resources, and that's the way we win our relationship and win some kind of decent and principled relationship to the question of land. I think everybody will end up doing that, conceding who this land belongs to, and then fighting side by side with them to take it back. For them. For them. And in unity with them, recognizing that Africa is our national homeland. Uhuru.
Uhuru. I don't see it. Sorry. We have another Chairman. Thank you so much. That is so powerful. I just want to announce we have another, I think, reparations, but it's not coming up on my phone.
What was the last one you read?
Shannon Eccles.
Shannon Eccles. So the next one I see is Nana Ya, who donated $50.
All right.
He says, Uhuru, I'm donating this in the name of the late father my late father Vernon Marks Sr., who instilled in me that if you want to be a part of progress, you have to be a part of the process. Whatever material resources I have, it is because of this great man. Uhuru.
Wow.
And then we have Aaron Kimber, aka Kabaka, who donated $5. It says, keep it up, Uhuru.
All right.
And then we have Diana and Oleskevich, and
wow.
They donated $200. And they said, we are happy to make reparations as a small way to continue waking up white. It just says white people. Mm-hmm.
Right on.
And it says, Uhuru. And then we have a donation from Kitty Riley of $25.
All right.
And she says, Uhuru, thank you, African People's Socialist Party and the Black Power Blueprint for creating such a positive future for the African working class, all oppressed people, and white people through reparations. Uhuru, Kitty. And then, and then we have another donation from Marissa Lawfer. She says $50. Uhuru. It says,
all right.
She says, Uhuru Chairman Omali Yeshitela, I was looking for a movement that would bring the reparations demands to the white community. Such an honor to be in the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And then we have Ann Hirsch with another donation of $75. Uhuru. And Ann says, thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is our opportunity to make self-criticism. It is our opportunity to join a bright future under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Truth does set us free. So we are at $950. So all we need is $50 more to make our.
We want to keep going.
Yeah, we want to keep going.
Yeah.
We want to keep going, but we're over $44,000 now. Total. All right.
We're winning.
And we're at $44,066. So we're almost to our goal for this, our original goal of $45,000. We're must be about 99% there. This is very, very powerful. I really want to salute the stand of reparations that people have taken tonight, and also support from other members of the African community that have given tonight. This is incredible. This is really powerful. We have only $50 more to go to make 1,000, and we can go over that. But of course, somebody's going to put that in.
Uhuru. And we have a solidarity statement from Benjamin Prado.
Oh,
says,
Uhuru.
Uhuru. Union del Barrio unites with the Black Power Blueprint and African internationalism. Uhuru.
All right. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Wow, that is so powerful.
Uhuru, Chairman. I have one more question. And Chairman, there is going to be a marketplace in St. Louis right across the Uhuru House. It will be called the One Africa, One Nation Marketplace, something the party already has in other places. Chairman, what do we mean by One Africa, One Nation?
Thank you.
Why is the Black Power Blueprint so important to African people in the Caribbean or in Africa or anywhere in the world today?
First of all, the Black Power Blueprint is part of a dual and contending struggle for dual and contending power. And that's really something that should be understood, because the struggle for dual and contending power is a revolutionary project, it's a revolutionary strategy. So it means that before the revolution happens, you don't wait till the revolution happens to get power. You start getting power to make the revolution happen. And so wherever, this is something we're talking about here, but we're talking about dual and contending power can be applied any place on earth where we are located, in Africa, etc. It's called, under certain circumstances, it has been referred to as liberated territory and what have you. We're always involved in trying to create that territory. It becomes a base from which we actually create actual economic and political life, and also a base for expanding the struggle against our oppression and against colonialism. So I think it's really important to say that it is what we're talking about, dual and contending power, when we talk about the Black Power blueprint. That's one of the things that makes it so extremely important. There was another aspect to the question that you raised that had to do with what?
And why is the Black Power blueprint so important for African people in the Caribbean or in Africa?
And I think I did deal with that, because wherever we are, the thing is that to create independent bases of power within the African working class, and this helps to erode the power of the colonizer. This helps to erode the power of the bourgeoisie or the petty bourgeoisie or the neo-colonialists. When you get power, it's power they don't have. Do you see? When it erodes the power that they have, it grows more power to the people, even as you are making the struggle. Some people think of revolution only as people who are with arms only. I said only as people who are with arms doing such and such a thing. But revolution is about the actual capture of political power and removing a foreign hostile power from our lives. The democracy for the colonized is to eliminate the influence and capacity of the colonial state in our existence, in our lives. So we began to create our own life. That's why, and that's what you see happening over, they like to call this group the Islamic, they say the so-called Islamic State. They say so-called because they've captured power in different places. They have taxes. They run the cities and stuff like that. They have state power. They exercise state power, but they don't want to say that we're fighting against a state. They delegitimize this entity that they're fighting, so it's not a state, right? And so we are in the process of preparing to govern. We are governing in some instances. And so that's what it is. We are creating power, dual power, and every place we are located. It is a strategical concept that we are employing to begin to take power, and that power that we take for ourselves and for the African working class is power that we take from the colonizer or from the neo-colonial forces. And that's important. We do work in places like Sierra Leone and other places. We have initiated programs and campaigns to change the condition of the lives of the people there. And just like we did it, the government could have done it. But the fact that we do it is an example to the people that they don't need the damn government.
That's right.
They don't need the government. They don't need the neo-colonial government in Sierra Leone. They don't need the government in St. Louis. The people get an opportunity to see they don't need the government. They have their own capacity, and that's what we're doing, constructing it right in public view.
Thank you, Chairman, and we want to acknowledge Suki Borkin, who gave $10 tonight. So we're only $40 short. And Suki said, "I am so grateful to see the beauty and spirit of warriors. We will win."
We are winning.
Yes, we are winning.
We must.
Yes, and I want to salute again David Redbeard, who has been so amazing in just all of the contributions and stand of reparations that you have made over the years, and through specifically to this project. Last week gave $1,300.
Whoa, Redbeard!
Very, very powerful. Out in San Francisco, David Redbeard.
Wow, Uhuru, thank you to people like David Reardon, Redbeard. It's so inspiring to see white people taking this stance and taking it in a material way, That's really putting your money and your future, where your future best lies. We're on a sinking ship here with imperialism.
That's
and
right.
it's
We want to
every white
little
person
life
that
raft.
exactly join the life raft.
Uhuru, uhuru. Salute to David Redbeard. Long time, very, very many years of
Yeah.
support and solidarity for the African People's Socialist
Yeah.
Party. Uhuru. Uhuru. So, this has been amazing tonight, and I just want to say, okay, we just need $40 more to make our goal, so come on. That's going to just go ahead, put it on your credit card, just take it out and go to youcaring.com/blackpowerblueprint and go ahead and put that in, and wow, this is going to be historic. Will be over $44,000 towards this project, just coming in from people all over who have put in large and small, $5 to $1,300, $1,000. It's come in, and we can do this. We can do this. This is part of a historic revolutionary movement that we can be part of. So it's been such an honor. And Chairman, I had a question. This has been an amazing discussion, because you can't hear this anyplace else in the world, as we've said. I just wanted you addressed APSC, the African People's Solidarity Committee, a little bit earlier, and that's us, the white people, under the leadership of the African Revolution, which is an incredible thing to be part of. It's so profound and amazing that we have a role to play, because we have to go back into the belly of the beast and win other white people and show that, you know, that not all white people are going to be united with imperialism, that there's a whole bunch of us who stand on the side of victory for African people and want to see an end to white power and want to be an end to being a colonizer. White people under the leadership of the party.
Yeah, I think that's important. You were there from the beginning, Penny, and when we organized the African People's Solidarity Committee, and initially I was telling somebody today, much of our motivation was practical, in the sense that most of the resources of the peoples of the world is in a white community somewhere. And we had known white people in North America over a number of years who demonstrated some kind of unity with what it is we were trying to do. And in 1976, we attended a mobilization in Philadelphia that was really led by the Puerto Rican Socialist Party. And it was called a Bicentennial Without Colonies. That was an important mobilization for us, because the U.S. government had effectively destroyed a movement, and the whole issue of colonialism had been pushed off of anybody's agenda. There was no discussion of colonialism anymore. And in fact, it's really interesting, because at that time, one of the African groups, another African group that was working with this project for this mobilization, was the Black Panther Party, as it manifested itself at this time in 1976. And the Black Panther Party was opposed to our struggle, the way we define our struggle against colonialism and national oppression, because the leader was saying that Huey P. Newton's philosophy of intercommunalism, meant that nations didn't exist anymore, just communities, etc., something to that effect. But anyway, coming from that, we called a meeting with a lot of the comrades who had been supporters of some sort. I had met Penny Hess in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky, at an event that we did there, and perhaps invited her to come to the meeting we were having. I'm not sure, because we organized a conference here in St. Petersburg, Florida, where we pulled APSC together. I made a 13-hour presentation on dialect and historical materialism at that two-day conference. And among some of the white people, but the relationship and the practice because we learn from practice, right? And we began to develop more of our understanding around the question too, and it helped us in actually development of African internationalism, which is an ever-developing theory, because it confirmed some things that as materialists we already knew. And that is that white people are people. Now, there was a lot of suspicions around that question. I mean, if you knew, like most people who are participating in this don't know anything about the struggles and positions that exist inside the African community about white people. Because nobody tells white people what they really think. You understand? And but there are different positions out there in the African community. We were able, using the science of dialectical and historical materialism, actually, and the practice that we were involved in that confirmed it, we were actually able to move beyond simply the practical basis for the relationship, and to understand that part of what we were about is the recognition, as I said, that white people are people, and that white people can participate in this struggle, in this movement, but part of what it requires is the struggle against colonialism, that critical to the whole question. Even the white nation got created in the process of taking away the consolidation of other peoples and stuff like that, and the rise of capitalism. That's when we talk about people committing suicide, more white people, we say we don't want you to commit that suicide. Commit national suicide, because the white nation, the European nation itself, was born of the oppression, slavery, colonization of the peoples around the world. This is the thing that consolidated white people as a people. There was no such thing as white people, Europeans, etc. before. That's the definition and that was used by white people themselves. They define themselves in relationship to other groups of what we call white people now. You know, Celts and Normans and Normans and stuff like that, right? But anyway, we learned a lot from this process, and I think that we have come to understand the possibility of creating the world without borders that's been talked about, but it's going to have to come as a consequence of the total liberation of Africa and African people. And I think that that we have the person said something about warriors and something about reparations. We put it on. It's not something that we talk about. We do it. We are practical revolutionaries. If you hear us talking about it, we're doing it. If we talk about reparations, it's happening. If we talk about dual power, it's not an idea. We're doing it. Yeah. And that's who we are in the real world. And we talk about this relationship with white people and building another world. We're actually constructing it as we have this discussion. What is happening is through the African People's Solidarity Committee and its primary task being associated with reparations in the white community. Most of the time, this discussion of reparations is just something that happens in small groups in the African community, sometimes conferences and things like that. But to have this discussion that's going on in the white community so that we fight for it from the perspective and the spaces of the African Revolution directly, and then indirectly we fight for it from the spaces in the white community. So people will be hearing about reparations more and more, and they don't even know why they're hearing about reparations, but because of what the party's been able to unleash through the African People's Solidarity Committee. And I also want to say that Comrade Penny Hess has played an incredible role in helping to make this thing happen. She really has become the template for us of what is possible for white people to be. And I think that in the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, in you, and organized, in you, doing what it is you're doing, I think white people have the ability to see the future of what they can be in you. And so I want to say that. I think it's really important, you know. Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman Uhuru.
Yeah.
That is, I'm very, very honored to have the opportunity. You know, I can't think of a better way to live, a better, you know, life to have lived and to continue to live. And it's such an honor to have this experience of being in the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the African working class and see the world that I want to be part of. You know, what the world is going to be when African workers have power. Wow, what a beautiful world, and we see that. And Chairman, I just want to let you know that Suki Borkin put in $40 more.
Oh.
So I want to salute that. And then Casey Mackey put in $40 more.
Oh,
Bobby Wittenberg put in $40 more. and Benjamin Prado from Union del Barrio put in $50. And you know, Union del Barrio is a long time, very close comrades of the African People's Socialist Party, struggling for the liberation of the Mexican, the Spanish-speaking indigenous people, the right of Mexican people to their land and their self-determination. So we just really want to salute. Wow. And we're only $754 away from our goal of $45,000. All right. Wow. Wow. That is so powerful. And also to say, I want to make sure I'm being correct, 11 a.m. Central tomorrow on Facebook. If you go to the Black Power Blueprint Facebook page, we will see some of the demolition that's going to be happening of those buildings across the street. All right. So what the reparations that you put in tonight, you're going to see the results tomorrow.
Right on. Somebody asked the question, that's where it's going.
That's right. That's right. Because you can't believe how much it costs to tear down, to demolish a building. I mean, you know, it costs a lot of money.
It's kind of a beautiful image for African revolution, because here you have an example of white power. It's crumbling, right? And it needs to be toppled over so that black power can be built up.
May I say, it's kind of an aside, but you know, when you mentioned Comrade Benjamin Prado and the long-standing relationship our party has with Union del Barrio, I think that it represents a powerful strategic relationship. I think about the indignities that's imposed on colonized people everywhere, and what we see that happening to us, we see that happen to the Mexican people. Yes. We know of the slander historically that we heard about Mexicans and what have you, just growing up, you hear that, and Trump is now building a wall, and you know, this relationship that we have with Union del Barrio, ultimately, you know, it makes the wall ridiculous anyway, because this revolution, there's no way there's going to be a revolution on this side of the border that's not happening on the other side of the border. You understand? Right. That we are developing with the Mexican people. Because this revolution is going to cross all these borders. These borders are going to be made meaningless by the revolution. And I had a particularly personal, deep, and profound relationship with one of the founders of Union del Barrio, my compa Ernesto Bustillo. Yes. We had a very deep relationship, and it was he who introduced us to Union del Barrio. The relationship is very profound. I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to recognize that from compañero Benjamin. These are incredible comrades, and it's going to be a really important, it's going to prove to be a really important relationship in this process. So, I mean, Trump is giving us a task, you know, in terms of, but the wall was already there, you know what I mean? They're talking about a wall, it's already been there. So, you know, part of our collective efforts are going to be tearing that sucker down, you know. Uhuru.
Uhuru. What a great, great web event tonight.
This has been fantastic.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, for being on. This was outstanding. Just see the vision of the future that's unfolding step by step before our very eyes, actually on the ground in the world.
Yeah, concrete.
Very, very amazing.
It is incredible, and we really appreciate everyone who has donated tonight. And I want to repeat, you can continue giving, continue going to youcaring.com/blackpowerblueprint. And I think we're on time to announce that the African People's Socialist Party's 7th Congress is happening October 6th through the 12th in St. Louis, Missouri. So go to see the new Uhuru House in person there at the Congress, the 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party. It's going to be an amazing historic event. And you can find out more about that. You can register at apspcongress.org. That's APSP as in African People's Socialist Party, Congress.org. And CURED Conference. That's the Coalition United for Communities United. I'm thinking of a former entity. Communities United for
Reparations and Economic
Development. And that conference is Saturday, June 30th, right here in St. Petersburg. And you'll have much more info at facebook.com/curedfl for Florida.
Uhuru. Also, I want to announce Allison Aiello gave $40. And I want to salute Allison because I think I know you, Allison, and you are in Boston. But last week you went to Maker Faire out in California, so I want to salute that. That's part of Black Star Industries. Uhuru Foods and Pies had an amazing 2 booths at this amazing huge fair in the San Francisco area. Also, I heard that that Allison, as the Reparations Challenge, ran one of the Boston marathons and raised $1,000 for doing that. And also coordinates, and we want to salute Comrade Raya Fogarty, who's also been part of this, but Allison has taken over the coordination of the birthday fundraisers on Facebook, which everybody can join, which has already raised almost $11,000 this year for the Black Power Blueprint. So this is a movement. This is a movement, and it is growing. It's growing on so many fronts, and it's very, very powerful to see. So we just want to announce that next week, next Tuesday night, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement will be hosting the web event, and that you can see that on their page, their Facebook page, Uhuru Solidarity Facebook page. And the theme will be No Pride in Genocide, and it will be taking on the question of the LGBT and the same gender loving. It's going to feature Secretary General Ghazi Kotso and just talk about this whole question of the white LGBT movement that also sits on the pedestal of the oppression of African people, and how we have to, even white LGBT, reparations to African people, and how we have to take that on and build that movement, a principled movement. It's also going to feature the amazing Mads Ambrose, who coordinates the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in Portland, Oregon, who they are amazing, brilliant speaker and organizer in the LGBT community of Portland, Oregon for USM. So, and also coordinates the Reparations Challenge. So just want to salute Mads and looking forward to that event. On June 19th, we're going to be going back to St. Louis, where Chicharo Masimba and Kitty Riley are going to be going around town in St. Louis and talking about the history of St. Louis, the history of African St. Louis, some of the things that the chairman was talking about. That's going to be very dynamic. And then on June 26th, we're going to be talking about housing as a human right, homelessness, and the Black Power Blueprint with Arunde Takuma, who is an activist and a longtime party supporter in Brooklyn, New York, who's done a lot around the question, doesn't even use the term homeless, you know, except to say that the land of Africa belongs to African people. Just the way that he approaches this question is very powerful, so I'm looking forward to that as well. So that's going to be our web events throughout the month of June. We're going to go ahead and go forward and really work to raise that $50,000, get up to $50,000 in that. So
and that means next Tuesday we'll be here, is that correct?
Next Tuesday,
June 12th?
yes, and that will be Uhuru Solidarity Movement will be hosting that.
Fantastic. So we look forward to that and hope everyone watching tonight will tell their friends, their family, anyone to tune in to these webinars. And I want to echo the thanks to everyone on this panel, in Secretary General Ghazi Kodzo, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Chairman Hess, to our studio audience, all our esteemed guests, and everyone online who gave so generously. Thank you. And Uhuru, we are winning. And before we close out, I wanted to ask Chairman Omali Yeshitela, do you have any final comments for us?
I think I made my final comments earlier. I just want to unite with you in expressing deep and profound appreciation for everyone who's participating in this process. Of course, African People's Solidarity Committee and Uhuru Solidarity Movement. I cannot leave here without also expressing appreciation for Comrade Deputy Chair Omali Yeshitela. Those other comrades right there on the front lines of this movement, comrades Ticharo and Kitty and comrades Maisha and Kalambayi and Naila and I mean all the forces that's there making this happen. Many people who see us don't know the growing strength of our movement on the ground there in a very short period of time. And I want to thank everybody who has participated, all the donors to this process, and truly we are about changing the world. And this is a dynamic process. To be a part of the process of this liberation of Africans and the peoples of the world. Uhuru.
Uhuru, it has been such an honor. Thank you, S.P. Ghazi. Thank you, Chairwoman Penny, and thank you, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. We will see you next Tuesday. Uhuru.
Unity through
Reparations!
Uhuru!
Uhuru!